radio, and it goes like ooh, yeah, yeah. And it goes like ooh, yeah, yeah. When I press play, all I hear is you. And it goes like ooh, yeah, yeah. When I press play, all I hear is you. Oh, every single song tells me we're through. Yeah, but I can't turn it off 'cause it's the truth. Yeah, it's the truth. And it goes like tells me we're through. Yeah, but I can't turn it off 'cause it's the truth. And it goes like yeah, yeah. But all I hear is oh. Song tells me we're through. Yeah, but I can't turn it off 'cause it's the truth. Yeah, it's the truth. And it goes like
evening, everyone, and welcome to the third edition of the Affluence Human Rights Festival. Today is the third day of the festival, and my name is Mbali Mtetwa. It's nice to see you all. Thank you for joining me. Our subjects of discussion today for the second session is beyond the potato stamps, materials to articulate, and we will be discussing printmaking. And so this year, the festival has been asking itself, how is creativity and artistic practice speaking to the souls of South Africans and redefining, reawakening, and redeveloping hope? What are some of the projects that are taking place in the fringes of society that are cutting new paths and finding new sense of self for South Africans? And joining me today is Georgina Berens and Lebogang Mabusela. Nice to meet you, ladies. Both of these ladies are printmakers, and please introduce yourselves.
Would you like to go first, Lebo?
Yeah, I'll go first. I am a full-time practicing artist and a self-proclaimed monotype babe. That means that I do printmaking. So I'm a printmaker, but practicing within like my studio, doing my own, like in my own print studio and specializing specifically in doing monotypes. So that means that most of my body of work as an artist like revolves around printing and printmaking. That's like the chosen medium to articulate all my ideas. And sometimes I also collaborate with various local artists, inviting them to my print studio to make work in response to a particular prompt or theme.
Thank you, Lebogang. Georgina.
I'm a Cape Town-based printmaker, and I also work collaboratively, so inviting people to come and work one-on-one with me. And then I also make prints in my own right.
And both of us are in a collective, a group called the Printing Girls,
I've
which
seen you
is
guys on Instagram.
yeah, which is a like a support group for women printmakers in South Africa.
Thank you. Our first question, I think I'll just go ask you about two questions and then we'll go on to the first video. So, my first question is what is your advice for people who want to use printmaking for social justice? Social justice.
Can you repeat the question? Because I think I was disconnected
No,
for,
my
yeah.
question was what would your advice be to people starting their career and want to use printmaking for social justice?
I think we have quite a long history in South Africa of using print for social justice. So I feel like it's almost in our bones as South Africans to turn to printmaking as a tool. Um, and the one really nice thing about printmaking is that it does bring people together. So in times of difficulty, we do need to come together, and printmaking is one of those wonderful mediums where you need more than one pair of hands often to bring things together, and that can be, I guess, therapeutic in its own right.
Yeah.
And another amazing thing, if we think back to struggle posters during apartheid, is that sometimes you can make a print with very little. Just like the title of this talk mentions, the potato stamp. You can make a stencil out of what you have around you, and that can be, that's the power of printmaking, I believe.
Yeah. Lebogang?
Yeah, what I'm gonna say is wanting to use printmaking to do work like around activism and social justice. Yeah, if you're gonna do it, you're gonna do it and nothing's gonna stop you. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
think as an artist, you wanna use like your creativity because artists are very creative and crafty. You wanna use it, your creativity to figure out how you are going to disseminate those prints, those artworks, because through those works you are like voicing something, and you want people to see the work and hear the message. Think very strategically about how you're gonna disseminate and show those works, because people seeing them and engaging with the work is like very, very important. Otherwise, you're creating the work for nothing if no one's gonna see it.
And maybe that's another reason why it's good to come together in making work, because then you've got that input and reflection on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. My second question would be, how do you cost effectively use resources to create professional works? And how do you build up resources to make the kind of prints you want?
I'm quite like in the very beginning stages of my career, I think. I've been practicing for close to like more than 4 years, and it feels very long. But then when you look at everything, like I'm thinking like, wow, I'm young, and that's like one of the things I'm trying to figure out, how to be sustainable and cost effective. And I won't lie to you, I'm not trying to discourage anyone, but like printmaking is so expensive. Just to build a print studio will take a long time for a regular person, unless you have like this endowment or like just money lying around, or you're getting grants from everywhere. Even if you do, you are able to get a print studio and secure all the materials. You have to maintain them, so it's a very, very expensive thing, which is like, this is why I love this panel discussion, to help young people figure out how to do this like cost effectively, but then also at a high quality level beyond a potato stamp. You know, one of the things that like I have kind of like sort of figured it out for myself in a way. I graduated from Wits University in 2018. So 2019, that's when I was starting to practice as an artist outside of school. And I had no longer had the print studio from Wits, and I sat the whole year not printing, just doing other things. And it was quite hard not printing for the whole year. And I've kind of created this identity of being a printmaker. So in like mid 2020, during the pandemic, that's when I bought my first printing press, which is small. I didn't even know that they create small printing presses. Like printing press is huge, it's humongous. And I've never seen a small one. I saw a small one and then got a hold of the person who makes them, did a crowdfunding campaign. There's a lot of people who love printmaking, and if they see another person who's very passionate about printmaking, they are going to help you to realize your dreams. So yeah, did a crowdfunding campaign, bought a small printing press, um, and I looked at the scale of the press not as a limitation, but like looked at it more like it's a challenge and something to tackle. And yeah, and I think it's the best thing I did for myself, the small printing press, because it actually helps me work more sustainably. And for someone, like I said, I'm in the early stages of my career, I'm learning a lot and I'm making mistakes. And if you're making mistakes while printing, it can be expensive. So on a small scale, it's sustainable for me. If I do like bad prints, it's not too much waste. It's not, yeah, even the ink, I'm not using too much ink. And even the paper, sometimes I don't even buy my own paper. I get offcuts from people's print studios. I was on a residency last year at Salzburg, and from there, that print studio, they gave me off cut.
Hello?
Hi, my name is Gerald khumalo, and I'm a painter and printmaker. Currently, I'm doing my third year at Michaelis, and I'm looking at experimenting with different materialities. So today I'll be discussing how I'm going about doing those experiments and possibly taking you through one of the processes. The materials that I use currently are mostly recycled materials. It ranges from anything, as long as it's flat and it can run through a press. Yeah, I can print it. The mistakes that I tend to make when printing is I realize you shouldn't print in the afternoon because it's a terrible idea. So when I'm printing my final prints and doing my proofs, I usually come in the morning, have a big breakfast, have coffee, and make sure that I'm going to dedicate my day to printing, because printing wants you to have a sober mind and to be very attentive to the medium. The way I structure my exhibitions is with every project that I do, I create myself a timeline that I can best fit my schedule around. This makes me easier to plan and to execute it. Sometimes I use those team apps, mostly Asana, because what's nice about Asana is if there's someone supervising me, I can show them the task that I want to do, and then once I've completed the task, I mark the task complete, and then they get to approve. But printmaking is a very collaborative process, and I think it's nice to work with people. So usually when I would be preparing for an exhibition, I'll have people who are sort of guiding me with the techniques that I'm going to be doing and preparing me for how to best execute the ideas that I have. But yeah, enough with the talking. Let me go show you my work. As you can see, this is the drawer where I keep all my plates. Here I was experimenting with like using coins and keys to create my calligraphs. I like this one. It worked really successfully. But yeah, these are basically like recycled materials to create plates. I also have some copper plates that I still need to experiment with. But currently I'm working on these calligraph plates, which I'm going to incorporate with sandpaper to create my prints. It doesn't look like much for now, but yeah. Can I show you the final prints of these plates? This is my favorite print. Basically what I did here is I inked it up as an intaglio and then used the roller to get the layer. So that's why you have to. So sometimes when you're working with like paper, you can create custom coloring on the same page depending on how you do that. But this is the quickest way to achieve it. The other method of creating the art is registration and wait for your ink to essentially dry.
Thank you, everyone. That was Gerald khumalo, and he is also a fellow printmaker. Yeah, ladies, what were your thoughts on Gerald and his process and his work?
I find Gerald so inspiring. I taught him lithography when he was in second year because he's a Michaelis student at UCT. And he looked at me the other day and he said, I just know that my destiny is printmaking. And I felt such a connection to that feeling of being, I discovered printmaking when I was 16. I heard about it and I thought, that's magic. I have to do that. I have to find out, and I'm going to be doing it for the rest of my life. And I just knew. And I think it's so important to know what you want to do and have those goals. But I also feel like it's very important to know what you don't want to do. And that's why Gerald's also been quite inspiring to me, because he comes to me and he says, I really don't like painting, or I really like sculpture, not for me. But you don't know until you've tried. So yeah, I think he's doing really well.
Thank you. Lebogang?
I really love how focused he is and how serious he is about printmaking. Sometimes I can be a bit like a stickler for the rules, and I love what he was talking about, like being sober, having the right energy. You have to get enough sleep, drink coffee, like do printmaking at a particular time. So you have to be like really good and pedantic about printmaking. You can't just go in the print studio for like 2 hours and expect to get things done in a like serious way. So that's what I love about, yeah, his practice and how serious he is about it. I've met him when he was still living in Joburg at the Wit School of Arts, and at that time he wasn't a fine art student, and he used to come to the print studio all the time as if like he's one of my classmates. And yeah, he'd be there on time and like leave the studio like later on after like really putting in substantial amount of hours.
Thank you, ladies. Yeah, sorry, Georgina, cut you. What were we saying?
Oh no, that's fine. I was just going to say it is so important to realize that also what Gerald was talking about, your timeline and how you structure your days and to eat before you print, because it's so easy to just get sucked into something and actually you need to be strong to be a printmaker. You need to have that energy. Yeah.
Georgina, you didn't get to answer our earlier question in terms of how do you cost effectively use resources to create professional works, and how you build resources to make the kinds of prints you want.
So I feel like Lebu touched on the kind of expense of printmaking and obviously a press and a space and a rental of a space can be a big cost besides ink and paper. But there are lots of printmaking techniques that you can do without a press. So for example, if you carve your own lino cuts or wood cuts, you can print by hand with certain papers and the back of a spoon. So I feel like it's really important to just talk to other artists and find ways within your circumstances to make work and get your work out there. And I also feel like so many of us with print studios and with presses want to share them and want to work with people. And we were in that position where we also needed the helping hand of someone else. So just approach people, talk to them, or apply for funding.
Yeah. Thank you. So how did you start as printmakers? What materials did you use to practice and experiment with? Lebogang, you can start.
I started as a printmaker at the Wit School of Arts when I was in first year. And
so it wasn't something from an earlier age?
No, it wasn't from an earlier age.
You were just first introduced to it in varsity?
Yeah, I didn't know much about like art and other mediums. I only knew about like drawing and painting, like pencil or pen, and then using acrylic from high school. And then when I went to university and came to Joburg, then like all these things opened up, the possibilities, seeing tapestries in the museums and seeing like how many materials you can use to create art. Then in varsity, I was introduced to making and monotype. It was very intriguing. So then I started to go on and investigate it more and explore some more. We were introduced to it like in a like very limited way, like okay, only using black ink on white paper and that's it. And then going on to go look at other artists who do printmaking, looking at other prints, going to the art fair and seeing something different. And then you ask yourself, how did you do this? And oh, it's a print, but how did you do it? And it looks like magic. Sometimes it looks like you want to make an image where people are going to ask you, how did you do it? So yeah, I got like interested in printmaking that way. The material that I was using were doilies, also known as placemats. Doilies, our grandmothers used to crochet doilies and put them on sofas and tables. Really intriguing, dainty, feminine objects. But I used doilies that I bought from the Oriental Plaza, the like vinyl ones, because you can easily clean them and reuse them and wash them, You can
Yeah.
even take them apart, unlike the cloth ones, the ones that are crocheted, the real ones. Yeah, so I used that in my work, and I was using these doilies, of course, like from a feminist lens, as a tool of like femininity and unpacking that and just incorporating these objects within the printmaking space, which is very male dominated, and creating work that is kind of like soft and of a feminine aesthetic. And that is like one of the things that I admire with monotypes, is that you can actually print objects with a monotype. You can, that's the thing that like really fascinated me the most with like using doilies, that I can put it through the press. I don't have to draw. I can just take other objects and use the impression on the print. So that's the material I was experimenting with. And then now I do something a bit more different, of like a painterly and drawy vibe when it comes to printmaking. Yeah.
Thank you. Georgina?
So I think I mentioned just now that I heard about printmaking when I was at high school,
Yeah.
and it wasn't offered at my school, but I went and found a studio, and an incredible woman who's since passed away, called Alma Foster, took me under her wing and became a mentor to me and taught me printmaking. And I went there every weekend and spent all my spare money from babysitting or whatever on paper, little pieces of paper. And I was obsessed and hooked, and I knew I wanted to study it, and she encouraged me to do that. And I actually took a gap year, and in that gap year, I made prints, had an exhibition, sold the prints, and spent the money from the exhibition on travels. And I went to lots of museums all over the world and like learned in that way. And then went to Michaela's, specialized in lithography, which is my true passion. And I did internships during and after university, which are also incredible, and an incredible way to learn about printmaking, because printmaking is one of those things, it exists, the rules are there, and they have been there for hundreds of years since the process was developed. Some processes are newer, but some are older, like stone lithography. And at the same time, we have technology constantly changing, and it's incredibly humbling to be a part of this method that is constantly, being influenced by technology. One of our viewers has just asked if I could explain lithography. So lithography is a process where water and grease, you play with and work with how water and grease repel one another. So with stone lithography, you're working on the surface of a piece of limestone, and you grain that down and prepare it so that it's ready to receive grease. And then you draw your image or paint your image with any kind of greasy substance. And traditionally, lithography crayons are really greasy. So once you've drawn your image, and greasy could be anything from putting lipstick on and kissing the stone, or dropping, greasy chips on the stone. But, if you want to stick to traditional materials, that would be touche, which is an ink, or the lithography crayons. And once your drawing is drawn, you use various chemicals to etch the stone without making holes in it. So the word etch is a little bit misleading. You're just kind of setting the drawing on that flat surface in place. And then you wash it out and you ink it up, and you're ready to print. And while you're printing, you are wetting the surface of the stone with a sponge so that the non-image areas, the porous stone areas, receive water. So the non-image areas are the non-greased areas, receive water and therefore repel the ink, which is greasy, that you add to the stone. And the drawing receives that grease of the ink and when it's ready, when it's inked up, it's ready to then print onto the paper. And then you put paper down on the stone, run it through a special press, a lithography press, and that's your print. And that's one of the first, mass forms of printing where labels, posters, everything was printed like that. And you would need to do one stone or one drawing per color. So, for example, maps were printed with, the rivers in blue and the green in green, and then the lines in black or red or whatever. So you often in printmaking, you have to do quite a lot of planning in how you divide things up like that. And that comes back to what I was saying about technology and how we can make use of things nowadays, like Photoshop, projectors. Yeah. I can go on a lot about lithography, so I'm going to stop there.
No. So, Lebogang, I don't know if you wanted to answer the question, Tara's question. Or no,
Okay.
actually. Oh, okay. Or do you
Should
want
I
to answer
answer?
Yusra's instead?
Ah,
Yusra is saying to Lebogang, I read that you create work that speaks to the reality of navigating within misogyny. What's that about? And then what does Georgina think of it?
okay. So at the moment, I'm working, like doing an ongoing body of work called Johannesburg Words, which was inspired by a Robert Hodgins print, an etching that I saw in a book, and it showed a crowd of people in the like foreground of the work, people just walking past each other, and then at the top there's like words sprawled around, like this whole energy and volume, and the work is called Joburg Words, and it was made a long time ago before I was even born, and during a particular time of like apartheid. So Joburg was a particular space that is different from now, and I could see these words that I'm familiar with, like even the street names, go vote and whatnot, things that are familiar in Joburg. And then I started reflecting on different artists' interpretations of the city of Joburg, this iconic space, and looking at the works that they do and how, like, what are they informed by, what are they looking at, some enjoyable things about Joburg. And I started thinking like, oh, I know what it's like to be a Black woman in the city that I really love, and my experience of it was catcalling and just men trying to get my attention. And every day when I go to ShopRite or when I go to work, when I go wherever for a walk, there's this thing, these like catcalling, misogynoir comments from men. So I made Joburg Words, which these small prints are 17 by 24 centimeters, and they have like 2.5 centimeter borders around them, with the border at the bottom being 3 centimeters. That's the format of the print. And it's these watercolor monotypes that are in full color, and they show two figures, a man and a woman. The man is catcalling, and then the woman has like whatever response they're giving, which is like maybe ignoring or walking away, looking annoyed and uncomfortable. So I make, the work is called Johannesburg Words. So in Johannesburg Words you will find that image, that representation, and then at the bottom there's like text sprawled around whatever word it is. Words like CC, hello sexy, Beyonce, hello darling, inwele zakho, which says, is that your hair? Or why is your hair so big? Can I have your numbers? Where do you stay? Can I walk with you? But like the text is in Vernac, sometimes English here and there. Catcalling is not something for, it's everywhere, but this one was particular to Joburg. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like these works, and I find them really, really inspiring, cheeky. I love that you're often throwing that kind of feeling back at men. And it's especially interesting that it's in response to the work of a white man, Robert Hodgins, an incredible artist, but still, a white man. And I like
Yeah.
that conversation between the two of you.
Yeah.
And I really encourage everyone to go and look up monotype prints. I'm a really big fan, and I know that we're also going to collaborate together some stage.
Yes. Thanks.
Okay. My next question is, how do you source materials now, presently in your career?
So I think maybe this comes back to something that was said earlier about making mistakes. I feel like a lot of finding the right suppliers and is kind of trying and then trying again. But I think Cape Town, if anyone's looking for suppliers in Cape Town, they're welcome to contact me, and I'd be happy to share list of suppliers. I feel like in Joburg, things are more spread out. So I have been in conversation with students studying there who struggle sometimes with that kind of separation. And I think in those cases, it's good to get together with people and, buy a ream of paper together as a group of 10 people and share it out, because then you're getting suppliers rates and you're building a community.
Yeah.
And you're probably getting better resources. Somebody was talking the other day about teaching at a university. I won't mention the name, but apparently the students had to all bring in their own solvents. So everyone was buying, little Terps bottles from Builder's Warehouse, and the stench and the smell was so strong. Get together, buy a big drum of something that's a little bit safer and share it out.
Yeah.
It's my advice.
Because I can imagine that would be more expensive for the students in terms of buying it individually instead of buying it in bulk. And so that would be like hard to fund their artwork.
Yeah, kind of like, I don't know, crowdfunding for turpentine.
And other supplies as well, but yeah, they should be buying in bulk. But Lebogang, how do you source your
Yeah.
material now?
Yeah, so sometimes I buy things that I cannot get from elsewhere for like be given. Sometimes I buy them from the sales from my works, or if I have a side job working, I don't know, somewhere. Yeah, last year I used to work at a bottle store. You keep that money and you save it so you can reinvest it in printmaking. And some of the things I get given for free. I think my peers like me and they support me and they want me to succeed. So I will get things. They will just give me inks. They will just give me like rollers and stuff. And like what Georgina was saying about like reaching out to people so you guys can put money together to buy something. Again, with like things being expensive, and then there's like this new type of paper you are want to use, because like paper in printmaking, paper is like fonts for a graphic designer. It's like a font, so you have to like so many papers, and you don't want to just use Fabriano every day. you know you want to learn more papers, see how they works, and experiment like that. So you'll find like they're selling a particular type of paper somewhere, and then it comes in reams. You want to go contact somebody and say, hey, let's buy this paper together, and then split it, and it becomes like way better that way, like sharing resources like that, like coming together to distribute resources. Another way of like sourcing materials, yeah, speaking to other people, really speaking to other people. And also sourcing materials, you want to do it in a very informed way, in a responsible way. I remember someone in the Printing Goals group was asking about a certain brand of ink before they were buying it. Like, hey guys, you know this name, the name of this ink. Um, is it good? Can I use it? Has anybody used it before? So you wanna inform yourself as well before you go out there and buy something and source a material.
Yeah, I see here Yusra is asking if you as a printmaker are making points for another artist, to what extent is it your work or do you get credited for? How much of you as an artist in the print is in the print for someone else?
I think this could maybe be divided into two sections, because sometimes there are different ways of working with artists as a printer. Some people do what's called contract printing, where someone brings you their plate or their project and then you edition it or print it for them. And in my mind, that's quite different to collaborative printmaking, where you and the printmaker are exchanging ideas and making the work together. At the end of the day, it's still signed by the artist and it's their work. But I feel that in collaborative printmaking, there's more of the printer in the prints always, because you can see studio to studio, there's a different kind of flavor. But I mean, at the end of the day, printmaking, as a printer, you are a technician. So if it's a really good quality print, that's a part of you in that.
Yeah, I say it's halfway, like, equal parts, the printmaker and the artist themselves. Sometimes I've been invited by like a printmaker and then they say like, I've seen you working in this particular way and then I want you to take what you do in your works and do 1, 2, 3, 4 in printmaking with that. So they're like giving you this how to do your work, but then in this new medium to make a new body of work. It's a like coming together of ideas when you're collaborating in that sense. Especially like for me when I do monotypes, I have my own idea and then I draw on the plate, but then the printmaker has informed much, like a lot into like what I'm doing in that work. And like, yeah, like the other, like Georgina's talking about two sections where like if you contract an artist to edition work for you, like print something and it's already, the image has already been created and then you as a printmaker you just finish it off. Yeah, I say yeah, it's equal parts. um I've collaborated with like 3 print studios alone like last year, and at like each print studio, if I'm gonna do like one body of work across all of them, I need to make sure that like I'm not gonna go and do what I did in that other print studio at another print studio as well, because this is like someone's trade secret. So this is someone's idea. If I'm printing at David Crit, I have to do something different at Artist Proof. I can't do an oil monotype at David Crit and then do it again at Artist Proof, because what's the point? Yeah.
I also feel like there's a lot of strength in actually stepping out of your space and into another space, because often as artists, we're so isolated and there is that kind of echo chamber of, no one's challenging you, no one's saying, have you thought about this or this?
Yeah.
And then I sometimes find when I collaborate with artists that they use a different color or a different process because I've said, hey, what about this? Or somebody else who's walked through the studio has suggested that. And then they take that back to their own practice. So I think it's really important to get out of your comfort zone.
I like to print with like other printmakers, go to a print studio because I want to be spoiled. And if I'm printing by myself, I have to mix my own inks. I have to cut my own paper. I have to clean my plates and my brushes when I'm done. So if you go to a printer, you just walk in with your image. You draw. Someone asks you what color do you want, and then they mix it for you. They give you a swatch and do everything. And then after you're done, you can leave, and then they will like clean everything up. But then you do know that like when the work sells, they'll take like 50%, which is fine, because sometimes you wanna relax and make the image. And like the whole process in printmaking of like mixing ink, making sure everything is clean can be exhausting. So the idea of collaborating with somebody else, like you get to be, a princess for a day.
It's so
Yeah.
nice to be the princess, but it's also really important, I think, to be the person cleaning the plates and sweeping the floor. And like, I feel like you almost appreciate it even more when you've been in that position.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Mm.
Thank you, ladies. I think now we'll go on to Gerald. No, we're in Natasha Norman's video, and then we'll comment on her video and go through the last 3 questions.
Fascination with Japanese woodblock printing began when I was completing my master's degree at UCT's Michaelis School of Fine Art, and I was making these very large-scale woodblock prints, and I was frustrated at the kind of flatness, how things were sitting just in layers on top of each other, because at the time I was very excited with thinking around the way that printmaking is a kind of painting. I think it's quite accepted now that a lot of contemporary painters use the tools of printmakers in the way in which they layer paint upon their canvas. So I was really mining relief print for its painterly qualities, and I came across traditional Japanese woodblock printing, and I pursued it, and I went to Japan for 2 residencies to learn the technique and to explore it. And something I absolutely love about it is its delicate sensitivity to materials. It is completely non-toxic. You use watercolor paints, a rice-based glue as your binder, wood, water, and paper. And going to Japan opened my eyes to a whole other side of printmaking. It removed it from the machinery, the need for presses and workshops, and took it into a much more intimate space, the space of the artist. Even in the use of materials, you're in a collaborative process. You are using paper that is made by someone. In the case of the Japanese paper, is made by a person. There's a kind of conversation with the people who've made your materials. My practice particularly has embraced the way that the materials I use have shown me that it's a collaboration between earth, process, and artwork, and that the final product of the work is a collaboration between all those things. And what I like about that way of doing things is it inserts me straight back into the natural ecosystem, the natural rhythm of the world. The materiality and technical aspect of print allows us to connect with source material, and connecting to that source, I think, is a space of hopefulness.
Thank you to Natasha Norman for her video contribution. Ladies, what are your thoughts?
I need to go to Japan. Yeah. I want to go
And
to
that's
Japan.
my immediate reaction is, gotta go, gotta make paper from scratch. It's really inspiring when someone has that follow through of, this thing really inspires me, I'm going to go to the country and learn it from the people there. And Natasha's absolutely right. You can do a lot with our resources that we have in South Africa. So, in Japan, they're using cherry wood or fancy woods for printmaking. Find an affordable wood in your South African city that works for you. If you want to make paper, we've got, sisal, banana leaves in Africa. Follow your passion. I actually am a slight studio hoarder, and every time I tear paper down, I keep those like tiny little strips. And then I realized the other day I've got a black bag full, and I connected with an artist this morning who's making paper, and she's taking that. So keep your own offcuts for other people, and ask other people for their offcuts.
And don't throw away your bad prints. If you make a bad print, of course, don't put it out there. It's like, it's an artwork, an artwork is an artwork. Put it away somewhere in a drawer. One day you're gonna use it. You're gonna make collages with it, or you are going to remake paper out of it.
And every bad print leads to a good print. So
Mm.
so much of printmaking is, okay, this squidged or like didn't print, or why did it do that? Was it the pressure? Was it the ink? Was it the paper? Was it the humidity in the air? Troubleshoot those things, but you have to make that bad print to find how to make the good print. It's a good point.
And also, in printmaking, you are spoiled for choice. There's so many different techniques, and each of them work differently, require different materials. I love how Natasha spoke about the wood blocks like they do in Japan that require the use of water and water soluble inks. What I do the most in my print studio, because I don't have good ventilation, I always opt for using water soluble processes, something that I can easily clean with sunlight or like fish oil, other than like using turpentine or alcohol, because it won't be good for my health if you are in a space that does not have good ventilation. So you want to think about those things as well, like being very careful of like the way you use the materials so that it doesn't affect your health, because we have a very long career, very long life. You don't want to be ill in like when you are 40, and get some type of like respiratory issues and like skin issues.
Yeah.
So there are mediums out there that are really safe, and what they've been doing in printmaking is like trying to do this green movement of using like sustainable materials and like nothing that's too harsh for the environment and your health.
Or too harsh on your wallet.
Yeah, thank you, ladies. So my second to last question is, whose work influenced yours and in what way?
Wow. So I think, speaking for myself, I was very much influenced by my mentor Alma, who I mentioned earlier. Not necessarily by her work, but maybe by her work and how much time she put into it. So printmaking can be hugely time consuming. And I found it so inspiring that she put all of this love and time into making something. And I think I was probably most kind of struck by a print exhibition when I went to the Kate Kollwitz Museum in Berlin. Kate was an artist who lived in a very sad and difficult time, and often her prints are so kind of wrought with feeling and emotion and passion. And I feel like printmaking is one of those mediums that can be so visceral and also in its making so cathartic. So that just popped into my mind. But I'm really inspired by so many South African printmakers, including Monotype Babe.
Okay, to answer this question, when I was still studying, there's this lady called Clazine. She does lino cuts, like all she does like these multi-layer, multicolor lino cuts, and she prints for herself. So as an artist, I was like, okay, so it's possible to have a print studio at your home and print all the time for yourself and just engage and focus on this one particular medium and expand it. um that's like one of the people that inspired me to keep on creating and do that and have my own print studio. And the other is like a few artists who've been printing for a long time. People like Sam Tlengetwa and Robert Hodgins. And I look at their prints are so amazing, and it shows that like if you are exposed to something, like every year you print, like you keep on improving and improving, you get so much better and better and better and more confident. And because you have access, you have time to practice and strengthen your images. And I could see that like, okay, because they've been printing for such a long time. I know Robert Hutchins had done like more than 300 prints with Artist Press, and it showed that like, okay, yeah, you can do this by practicing and you'll get better.
And those prints definitely became valuable over time, you know. So when you're starting out as a printmaker, maybe you're selling your prints for 200 Rand, and then suddenly, you know, over time, as a young investor, you invest in prints instead of sculptures because they're more accessible, and those rise in value and can become really incredible investments. And that's also inspiring.
It is. So my last question to you guys is, how do you structure your schedule when working towards an exhibition? And I think I just want to squeeze one more in. What advice do you have to printmakers just starting out? So maybe answer the first one. How do you schedule when working an exhibition? Georgina, you can start.
I think everyone works in different ways, right? So everyone's creative process looks different and everyone's creative space looks different. Some people want chaos and mess. I don't. I want, like, even this is a little bit worrying me a bit. But I think having that deadline of an exhibition is a really good way to work. Even if you don't have an exhibition set up with a gallery, set yourself your own deadlines, because that's still something on your CV. Set yourself your own exhibition venue. That's a really inspiring thing that I think that came out of COVID, was that people were having art events in non-art spaces. So I feel like the way that I structure my day is breakfast, walk to the studio, clear my head, and then I set myself a task before lunch and a task after lunch. And I try and do all my admin in the beginning of the day so that I've got a clear head for printing. And a lot of printmaking, the preparation to print, you know, the cleaning of the space, the tearing of the paper, the marking of the paper, the soaking, all of that is really therapeutic. And I think it readies your mind for that intense printing. So printmaking kind of has these lulls and heals, and work with that. And really, as Natasha Norman often says, you know, those things, especially in Japanese printmaking, are important. You know, the kento, the block, the water, the preparation of the block, the tools, the care for the tools. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but what was the second part of the question?
The second part of the question was, what advice do you have for new printmakers just starting out?
Okay. Wow. Do an internship. Come do an internship with me. I really think that's an amazing way to see into a print studio from the artist's perspective and the printer's perspective, and to figure out what you want to do, and if you like printmaking and where you might fit into printmaking. And yeah, definitely do an internship. That's my one piece of advice. And don't give up. Make bad prints and then make a better print.
Lebogang.
Cool. To answer the first question, work all the time. Always make work, and don't make work because it's for a show or an exhibition coming or there's a deadline. Just always make work, and that way you are prepared for anything, you know. And yeah, like Georgina was saying, always be prepared, like make preparations before you start a print. You need to make sure all the materials that you need are there. You need to cut the paper first, cut it to size. You need to have your packaging even ready for when you're done with that print, where you're gonna put it. You need to always draw and have all your references ready before you are going to start a print. If you need like to make 100 prints, you need to cut 100 sheets of paper already, and then next week then you can start printing. And what's the other thing I was gonna say? Yeah, keep your workspaces like neat and flowy so that everything is easy to do, and create like checklists for you. And this is like a rule that I go by that someone also told me, and I think it's a very important rule. It sounds crazy, but I think it works. Is that like you have to invest 10 hours in the print studio.
A
Yes,
day or a week or in a month.
you a day. If you wanna work 5 days a week, it's gonna be hard. Maybe you could do it 3 times a week. Choose for yourself. But then if you're gonna go in the print studio, at least dedicate 10 hours to get things
Yeah.
done. For me, it works that way. Like 10 hours in a print studio, everything will get done and things will be fruitful. And another thing, like if you have a deadline, for example, say your deadline is like the 20th of May. Make sure that like on the 5th of May, you are not making work or like touching up, you know. Make sure that like maybe a week or 2 weeks before the exhibition, you're just relaxing. You're doing nothing. You're just calm. The works are at the framers if they need to go there. Um, it makes things like more enjoyable than like
Yeah.
preparing things a week before. It's very stressful.
So prepare on time.
And yeah, always
Make a
prepared.
calendar.
Huh?
Make a calendar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Make a calendar. I'm obsessed with like notebooks. I collect notebooks, and
Me too.
I'll be using like yeah.
Checklist and to-do
I
list.
always I always do that, and I will be using 4 books at the same time because I can't walk and chew at the same time. So like I have a list. This book for one particular thing. This notebook is for drafting artist statement. The other one is for to-do lists. And then the other one is for like something else. Even like what did I eat today? Did I eat enough veggies? So yeah, always like write things down, keep a calendar, keep timelines. That's very important because our memories are not as good as you think. they are.
Yeah.
And always ask for help. Always ask for help. Another advice for like a young printmaker who's starting out, I won't lie, I've always been so intimidated with printmaking, or like be so hard on myself or be shy. I try to be confident, and don't be too hard on yourself. Don't be too intimidated. We all start somewhere. There's a first time for everything, and we are all still growing, you know. Be inventive, always ask questions, always try out new stuff. When I went to like the residency in Salzburg, there's like new things to learn every single day, you know. When I was at the residency, the printmaker, they asked me, so how do you print? How do you print with your paper? Do you wet the paper or do you print while it's dry? And I told him, like, I have to wet it first. And then he asked me, how do you wet it? And I told him, I just put it in a sink, in a bath for a certain minutes, and then blot it with a towel. And then he's like, oh, okay, haha, what a South African way to do it. And then I asked, okay, how do you do it? And he showed me like this new method of doing it, where you wet the paper with a sponge and then you wrap it in plastic. New method for me. Okay, cool. I love this method. I'm using it. And then one day I decide to go and galavant for 2 weeks. I leave the paper in the bag. I come back later on, the paper has mold on it. And at that time, I felt so horrible, so bad. Like, oh my God, how could I leave like paper in here? This is so stupid. Like,
Yeah.
But then I told myself, okay, relax. This is your first time doing this. It's something new that you learned and you made a mistake.
Yeah.
You move on. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies, for having us today and sharing your insights and experience in this very, niche market that you guys are in. It was really informative, and we appreciate you participating in our festival. So thank you to Bash as well for the technical support. And yeah, that brings us to the end of our session.
Thanks so much. Lovely to be here today.
Thank you, everyone. Good luck moving forward.
Okay.